Welcome back. This is episode 2 of Talks with My Latinx Therapist. My name is Dulce Encinas. I am the host and your licensed social worker here in Arizona. I am the owner of Kindness Therapy. And today I am with my co host, Ben, the creator.
Yo, yo.
And we're talking about Marianismo and Machismo. We started this project as just me talking about therapy, bringing awareness to the Latinx community. And now realizing that we hit a million,
1.4 million. No big deal.
No big deal. And so we noticed that there was a lot of engagement with Marianismo and Machismo, and said, you know what, episode 2 should be a
Breaking it down.
Yep, explanation of it all.
One of the things that happened is I ended up posting the clip on my page and it just blew up, and it was crazy seeing every couple seconds a like, a comment, and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is how it feels to be famous. No big deal. But anyway, so one of the things that was happening, there was a lot of people that were going in there, and I'm gonna say it like this: it was like a lot of the women were protecting you. A lot of the men were like, "Yo, she's Latinx," like that explains her. They probably think like you're a hardcore feminist, I'm assuming, or something like that. But I think they didn't take the time to go watch our podcast so you could get a better explanation of the whole thing. And with that being said, today we're going to ask you like exactly what each of them mean, and we're going to give the audience a better breakdown. And before we started recording, I brought up that when you first approached me and you hired me, I was like, all right, cool, it's fine. It's like my company, I'm going to get paid by doing a podcast and all this stuff. But when we're actually filming, I started feeling a little insecure because I felt like, dang, she went to school for 6 years. She has her degrees. She's been in the business in the industry for 10, 12 years, like doing with your practice. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I just finished high school. Like YouTube University is the reason why, like in Hustle University, how I'm an entrepreneur, but like having these conversations with you, I felt like I was out of place. I didn't belong to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And you gave me a little bit of feedback, but like we're going to finish this conversation here in front of the camera. So with that being said, what do you got to say about
I
that?
was just saying, I think this is a perfect example of machismo, right? And not in any way, shape, or form am I saying you're coming in here and being like, yo soy el macho, yo debería ser el mejor. I think the conversation is around like, how does machismo affect the way that you see yourself? And this is where I want to bring awareness, right? Because machismo is a social construct. What it means is that society has put that definition into what a man is supposed to be. And so you start processing that, and subconsciously you start having behaviors around that. And that's the beauty of therapy. But understanding like that machismo is something that you were taught at a very young age, and then growing up, right? It can cause feelings like that of like insecurity. I think that if I would have been a male, maybe you would have felt that insecure as well, but it wouldn't have felt so much as, oh, how come she does that, right? Or that comparison piece. Where if it would have been a male, what typically happens in a room of males, or what I've seen, is that they bang their chest and I do this and I do that. And you start this argument competition thing, but then you like assert respect and then that's it. Where with a female, you're like, I can't really bang my chest over here with her. I have to figure out how to do this different. And that, I'm not saying that I'm intimidating, but I think that the idea of, oh, she probably thinks she's better than me, or those feelings. And because you're more in tune with your emotions, you're able to break them down and say, this is how I felt. Where I think majority of people, males specifically, who are not aware of their machismo and their emotions, they probably have been like, like, I don't want to know anything about it. And so breaking those things down, understanding what are some of the like subconscious understanding of machismo and how does that portray into your behavior has a lot to do with that, right? Like being aware of it and noticing, oh, this is not really my feeling. This is like a generalized society feeling.
Yeah. So with that being said, like just give us the breakdown overall. Like what is machismo then?
Okay, so
educate me.
Yes, I love doing that. Just kidding. The word macho is just male in Spanish. That's what macho is, right? It's tienes una hembra y un macho. And just for those of you that were commenting on TikTok, I am a paisa. Like I was born and raised in Mexico.
Yeah, they're calling you whitewash Mexican.
I know. I saw that a lot. I was like, the blonde is not my vibe. I just tried it for the summer this year. But no, like I actually feel more comfortable speaking in Spanish than speaking English sometimes. And sometimes you can hear my accent. But the term macho just means male. And the term came up in the 1930s by social studies, right? So yes, it is a term that it came up in the United States to define how Latin America looks at the male. And that's why I said toxic masculinity last time, because that would be like the token term now in the States. But in Latin America, see, you heard my accent. In
Yeah.
Latin America,
Latin America.
we have the idea of the macho, of what does it mean to be a man in Latin America. And that's where the Vicente Fernandez song came up, right?
Yeah.
And the Pancho Villa reference, because it comes with the idea that males are supposed to be womanizers, that they're the ones that provide for everything. And I think I saw in one of the comments that said, being a macho means providing for your family and protecting. Yes. And the other pieces as well, where it says, I'm better than the
Yeah.
woman should stay home, the man should provide. And so it doesn't open the door for women to provide as well. Or there's this expectation that women provide and on top of it, take care of the home.
Yeah.
And so the idea of machismo is actually the social construct. When I'm talking about machismo specifically, I'm talking about the social construct of it. The word that in the university people, doctors came up with to refer to this social construct, right? And the same way as Marianismo. And so Marianismo actually came in later. It was in 1973, and I actually have a specific person that came with the name. Her last name is Stevens, and so she is also the social studies
Mhm.
doctor actually. And she talked about how in Latin America, women play a role based on the Virgin Mary. That's why Marianismo for the word Maria,
Mm,
right? Como Virgen Maria.
yeah.
And so there's this idea that women have to be self sacrificial, that they have to play the role of taking care of the family, even if that means they stop taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
And it really puts a lot of, ironically, and we'll talk a little bit more about this,
Yeah.
a lot of Latin American women actually are more machistas than the males, just in the way that they raise their boys, in the way that they like say things like, you're the male, you should be blah, 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 right? Or, oh, my boy is going to get a different treatment than my girl. Because boys
Well,
are,
yeah, like I noticed it didn't really happen to me, but I do notice that a lot of I guess Mexican women like they baby the kids, and there's even memes where it's like they have a actually I do that with my son. Oh, but he's so cute. He's 4 years old, and we carry him and love him. But the women tend to do that more.
yeah,
Just I'm giving you my perspective of like
yeah,
what I
because
grew up
there's
with.
this idea that males are going to have more rights than females. And
Huh?
so the man is going to turn into be my Lord and Savior when they turn older, right? Like
Yeah.
my son is going to be able to take care of us. My daughter might just marry off and forget about her family. So there's more worth placed on the women than the men. And that's why machismo and Marianismo are toxic, because it's not giving the same rights to both. It's not being equal treatment for both,
Hmm.
right? There's like this difference in gender and in the role that they play in society. Like the macho is not supposed to cry. And I'm sure you've heard that a
Hmm.
million times, right? Like machos son fuertes. You work. I think that's usually where it starts turning risky for the family, because what I typically see is that the male would work, provide, and not say anything. So he's not involved in raising the children. He's not involved in making decisions, emotional decisions, or disciplining in the house. Sometimes he's the last resort for discipline. So he's not,
He's the hammer.
yeah, he's not actively parenting 24/7. You see him more parenting when he's needed. And it's
Le
like
voy a
you
decir a tu
said,
papá si me
uh-huh,
haces caso.
exactamente.
Oh
And
shit.
so the male doesn't really show up as emotional. I'm pretty sure as people are listening today, like you can count on your hands how many times your dad cried. Like it's not a normal thing in our culture. And I'm again, specifically when I talk about my experiences, I'm talking about Mexican culture, because I'm not.
I'm just thinking of my dad.
Yes.
I got emotional thinking about yeah. It's no, you're absolutely right. It's like
Hmm.
the times that I seen him cry. It's been a couple
Son
rare times,
contadas. Yeah.
and it hurts to think
Right.
about him like that.
Yeah, because he should be allowed to feel,
Yeah.
right? No es un burro que trabaja nada más. He's supposed to show emotion. He's, like I told you in our last like a last episode. I was gonna say last session. I'm so used to like giving therapy. In our last episode,
Yeah.
like I told you, like being emotional is a good thing.
Yeah.
Everybody should be emotional. And when we rip that away from a human, it's really that's why they're like so stuck. It and the thing about the brain is that it doesn't just close off emotion in the hard parts, it close off emotion in the good parts. So you also don't see them being soft,
Yeah.
right? And I want to be really careful with the word soft because when we say soft, people usually assume that I'm talking about men being more like, oh, poor little me. No.
Yeah.
When I'm saying soft, just be in tune with your feelings. Be okay with feeling what you're feeling, like you
Yeah.
said right now. Like, oh, I just thought of my dad and I felt
Yeah.
that. And it's deep in my core. And that's something beautiful because now you're providing empathy for your dad.
Yeah.
You're providing space for it and you're providing empathy for yourself. You're breaking generational curses already.
Mm.
You know?
No, I think overall, like the for me, like we talked about this like the last episode that I'm an emotional person, but like for growing up, I remember being the way I was. People used to try to pick on me, and but also too, ever since I started puberty when I was 13 years old, like I started lifting weights, putting on muscle, and learn how to fight. And I was consistently fighting myself. I'm like, dude, why the heck am I like? I'm over 200 pounds. I got weight on me, and but I had to like it was annoying because I would have to always I was always tested because I was also too I was like a little what would you call it? I guess womanizer.
Mhm,
Yeah, I was
mhm.
like a player,
Yeah.
player. But yeah, no, I would talk to a lot of girls, and I don't know I guess I'm just a guy, but so a lot of people like knew me and they just thought I was like okay, like he only likes talking to girls all the time, and I didn't really play sports. I didn't play like I did play as a kid, but I never got into teams. Like I was never to this day my son knows more about football than I do and
Mhm,
any sports in general, like at all. So, but I was always tested and I would have to always defend myself. And then also, too, like I stepped into this role where growing up, one of my biggest heroes is Superman. That's what my son's name is, Kal-El. And I always believe in doing the right thing. But also,
mhm,
too, like I saw, like I guess my idea of a powerful man was like someone that was oh, my dad,
mhm,
someone that was hardworking. He put his family first, and my dad till this day, like he knows the answers, but he's always there. Even when, and I still remember this. Him and I, we still occasionally have these talks like about how he randomly tells me, "Hey, do you still remember when I was like 5 years old? I had a bad ear infection, and we we were at a house in Mexicali because I don't know if you knew this, but we lived in Mexicali for a couple of years when we were little kids, and I remember like the ear infection was so bad, and what was doing was just holding my dad, and I felt
mhm,
safe, and somehow I guess like my brain's playing like this, like almost like it was like almost like holding me made the pain go away. So, but yeah, so like I grew up like that. Like my dad always put everybody first. He does for us, and then everybody else. And so I grew up like that. Like I always stood up doing the right thing. And then also why like I love Superman is because he stands up for people that are weaker, and that's like the I'm so sorry,
don't
but
apologize ever.
I feel like went off. But overall, but yeah, that's like my idea. Like there's some stuff like where like I definitely have some traits what you would consider like what everybody's talking shit on the comments like machismo. I do believe like a man should be able to support and be the anchor of the family.
And I think that's where it gets blurry, right? When people assume that masculinity, and I think that's why people were like triggered because I was like,
Yeah.
masculinity is a beautiful thing. It's not beautiful when it's toxic.
Yeah.
People were like, feminism is a beautiful thing, not when it's, well, that's the thing. Like, masculinity, yes, men are supposed to protect. When I talk to my clients, I say women are the tree, the trunk, and the roots of the house. The
Yeah.
male are the ground and the environment and the water and everything that protects them. If you want a well balanced household, you're going to make sure that your wife is taken care of emotionally protected, right? What you
Mhm.
just described right now was your dad emotionally protecting you. He wasn't going to take the fever away. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't going to
Mhm.
do you surgery. It was the feeling of him being there and protecting you that only males can do. Females can do it as well. And in no way, shape, or form am I bashing single mom. I'm one, right?
Mhm.
Single moms that have to be that protector for our kids. But the male role is so important in providing that. And there are so many things as a masculine energy that you provide that a female energy can't provide
Yeah.
unless we try to, which I've done for a long time. But my point is there's nothing wrong with being tough. There's nothing wrong with being the one that's working. I grew up in a typical Mexican family. My dad works all the time and he's also bien cerrado, ¿no? Ahora
Yeah.
que ya estamos grandes, hola papi, si me estás viendo, papá, dame un beso, abrázame, dime que me quieres. I'm like annoying because I want him to be in tune with his
Yeah.
emotions. And even in hasta cierto punto, the way that our culture moves around masculinity son hasta toscos, right? Like
Yeah.
men are very like, sí, mijita, how are you?
Yeah.
Right? Like this thick voice, this in no way, shape, or form am I saying don't do that. What I'm saying is be careful when you start thinking of like being a male turning into a womanizer or turning into I don't have feelings and I shouldn't feel. All I do is work and that's it. Right. And the women should stay in the kitchen. I think I saw one of the
Mhm.
comments. Put her in the
Yeah,
kitchen.
they said
I do
that.
cook, by the way. I do feel very comfortable in the kitchen. But it starts turning toxic when the female is not allowed to be a female in the
Yeah.
sense that if she wants to get a career and do whatever she wants, she can,
Yeah.
or when the expectation is for the female to take care of the entire house while she's working,
Yeah.
then that's too much for her. At this point, you have to make it a team
Yeah.
and allow yourself to feel. I think also like when you got bullied or pressured
I
in
didn't get bullied.
middle school or high school, yeah.
I clap back. Just kidding.
Yeah. But when that happened,
Yeah.
that's a product of toxic
It
masculinity.
really is. I know
¿Por
that.
qué? Porque
Till this day, like even
right,
yeah, like
like
even now, like some of the like people I grew up with, it's light teasing or whatever, but it's still like about that. So and it
quiere
is just
llorar, quiere llorar, quiere llorar.
yeah, like
Right.
all that stuff. But like I said, like I'm the last couple of years I've been able to embrace it. It's been again, like I'm a grown ass man. I'm over 220 pounds. Like you, like just because like I'll cry right now in front of you, it doesn't mean like I won't. Like I did some MMA when I was younger, and just so you know, catch me in the streets, just catch me outside. But overall, like it doesn't mean like I won't defend myself. And this is something that I teach my son. Like I tell him because he's learning how to box, and I've been teaching him, and I tell him like, hey, you do not that's not your first answer like to everything like you're gonna go have to fight and that doesn't mean also getting into arguments every time like right now we're taking everything lightly we're in and actually all the comments were they're just bashing you
That's fine.
but overall it's either we have the choice to engage and get in this like circle like never ending going back and forth or just ignore it or just take that
Or
energy.
hear it and explain to you why that doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
I am very comfortable in breaking down what you think
Yeah.
because I've been doing it for a while. But on the other hand, we have Marianismo, which I
Mm.
think Marianismo is the enabling of machismo, right? Marianismo is, and I saw a lot of comments from females were like, mom apologizing is a bowl of fruit, right? Or moms don't apologize. And I think it goes hand in hand. I also don't have feelings because I'm the self sacrificial mother,
Yeah.
which then starts turning into resentment. And that victimization, like being the self-sacrificial person turns into manipulation and that's when it's toxic, right? So yes, I am also calling out women in this one. Machismo can live on its own, but it gets reinforced with Marianismo. Pobrecita yo. That's what I meant by that, right? Porque la Virgen Maria is the Holy Virgin Mary. She never did anything wrong. Therefore, I shouldn't do anything wrong. So I should be listening. I should be submissive. I should be doing everything that I'm supposed to do. Y tristemente, we pass down the same thoughts to our children, right? And so we tell our little girls like, go and clean the house, make sure that you learn how to sweep and mop and clean because when you grow up and you get married, somebody's not going to do it for you. You're going to have to do it yourself. You have to learn how to cook because that's as a woman, what you're worth. And that's not it, right? Like we should, doesn't mean it happens, but we
Yeah.
should love each other just because you're amazing and because I'm
Yeah.
amazing and we have great vibes. But I think that for a long time, women's worth was based on their ability to cook and clean and have children. And now we're changing. Now it's shifting. And women have to re-question themselves in the way of I know how to cook and clean and I want to get married, but I also want to do X, Y, and Z. And then that's where the clashing comes in because you have to also own up to your own mistakes,
Yeah.
right? And I think women also engage in machismo when, like I said, like when we say things like, pues tú eres el hombre, tú debes de pagar todo. Si yo me quedo sin trabajo, tú tienes que seguir. Where's the partnership in that,
Yeah.
right? O yo soy la mujer, así que yo voy a limpiar y yo voy a cocinar and I'm going to do everything and you just have to sit back and chill.
Yeah.
But I also work. I can't do it all. So how do you the shifting of that or making it better would be rethinking it and working as a team.
Yeah, I think overall, like that's I'm reflecting of like my personal experiences growing up, and if I go through like anything big financially, I'm always putting stress on myself. And before talking to my fiance and saying, "Hey, this is what's happening," and I'm working more on talking to her, like letting her like, "Hey, this is what's happening," and we have been implementing that where it's like we're like tag teaming stuff if anything comes up. But prior to that, like when I first went through depression, I just was holding everything in. Like I felt
Mhm.
like I had to, in a way, I was like, no, I have to deal with this.
Exactly. That's a
So,
that's an example,
well, that's
prime example of machismo.
yeah, and I was like, and it was obviously I got to the breaking point where like I
Exactly.
went through the depression and I was suicidal at one point, but it was because I kept everything in.
Yeah, like the whole point of breaking machismo down is to give grace to men. Guys, I'm not against you. Like I'm for you. If we break machismo, then you open vulnerability with your fiance. You say,
Yeah,
"Babe, I have a lot on my plate. I don't know what else to do." Because now you're vulnerable and
yeah,
now you're giving me the chance. And now as a Marianista, right? Like shifting into something better. I'm not going to be here. Ay, pues porque llorón, ya me voy a divorciar de ti because I don't like soft guys, right? The right way to deal with that as a woman in our true feminine energy is to say, come and let me bear the stress with you and we will figure it
yeah,
out together. That's safe attachment. We'll talk about that in another episode. But like when I say let's break machismo and marianismo down, is because I want you guys to be working together as a partnership and being able to say, my husband has emotions, my fiance has emotions. I have to let him take out those emotions with me. And as a woman, I have emotions and I have needs, but I also have power and I can help him out. And that's where you do the partnership part rather than pero es que tú eres el hombre, pues no sé cómo le vas a hacer, 2 trabajos vas a tener because I wanna be everything paid for. But then, pobrecita yo, I'm doing it. Yeah, the balance is not there. And yes, I'm calling it out. I am saying we need to break these patterns because we're putting too much pressure in our men. And that eventually looks as chronic illnesses,
or suicide.
alcoholism, suicide, depression, and the exact same thing happened to women when they engage in Marianismo. There's too much pressure and then you start seeing chronic illnesses, breast cancer. I'm not saying that this is the exact same reason why, but there are enough studies that show that there's a correlation in between people who have had a hard life and chronic illnesses like diabetes and hypertension. So this can turn pretty risky if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not being honest about our emotions and our needs as men and women, right? Because if I play the victim, then I'm never going to take responsibility for my actions.
Yeah, no, that was like, man, there's a lot that I'm just with everything you're saying. It gets me.
Awareness.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
like I'm
Yes.
looking
I
at my
love it.
childhood, and there's almost so many stuff that I seen in school, and it is so different the culture in Mexico compared to here in the States. The way that kids express themselves.
Mhm.
We went camping this weekend, and one of my uncles brought his daughter, my little cousin, and the way she talks, like it's really. And even I seen some videos when they went viral, like how these kids are they talk like if they're like in a novela, like they're super like I
Dramatic
don't know if
and
you've seen
yeah.
one. I think it was like with this kid andaba hablando about something about like he was in love with this girl and he's crying and the mom's, oh no, don't worry. But he was like emotional, and but it was like because like I think a lot has to do with I think novelas too, to be honest.
100%.
Like
Yes.
growing up, because you know most of the what is it? Remember that novela?
Yes.
But like it's like the guy with no pants. I mean, with no pants, with no shirt and jeans, and like with the
With the
yeah,
latigo and the
yeah, and all
freaking
that stuff.
horse.
I think, but that has to do. I feel like that has a lot to do with that.
100%. Yes. I think that novelas actually reinforce a lot of social norms and they are toxic.
Hmm.
I don't know. I could do a whole, we should do another episode of just novelas and breaking down social norms and that, because just because they're there doesn't mean that we have to follow them.
Hmm.
I'd rather have a healthy household than a socially correct household.
I love it. I love it. I think today's episode was pretty informative, and I think the viewers are gonna get better clarification.
Yes, yes. And please, if you guys have questions, comments, feel free to send us all of them. You can DM us on TikTok, you can DM us on YouTube, you can DM us on our Instagram pages. So feel free to reach out. And then if there's more, if I'm like hitting on some things that you're like, oh, my heart, that's true. Feel free to tell us, share with us, and we can even read your stories and say, okay, listener, so and so said this and that. And then we can break it down and maybe give you some feedback, or maybe I can tell you some truth that you don't want to listen to. We're here.
Awesome, guys. We really appreciate you guys stopping by and watching our podcast, and everything she said. Follow us. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. Please note this is not a replacement for therapy. Professional help is always available. In case of a mental health emergency, the number is 988. Make sure to follow, subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time.